Good sticks, everyone. Welcome to the Captain Avalanche Fancast, your unofficial source for all things Colorado Avalanche hockey and more from a fan perspective. Hosted by me, Captain Avalanche Cory, and our extra in Jaws, Dom. Now, we're no insiders. We're not inside the locker room face-to-face with our favorite players, but we hope to create a relatable and welcoming environment because we're just like all of you listening, fans. Fans with a deep passion for the game of hockey, and in this case, the Colorado Avalanche. The Colorado Avalanche are above 500. And, you know, the Avalanche, they haven't really been on a lot of people's radars, especially because of their slow start to the season. Minus the big three, no one's paying attention to the Avs. And you know what? That's great. No one's talking about them, obviously, except for us. But I don't think people understand what's about to unfold. The storm that's coming. It has been announced that not only on Friday is Val Nichushkin coming back, but Jonathan Drouin and Miles Wood will be returning to the lineup as well, meaning that the Avalanche's top six is fully healthy and reformed. And is it not the nature of an Avalanche to have a big, large, unstoppable mound of snow sitting calmly at the top of a peak? But all it takes, it seems unassuming and safe, but all it takes is one small disturbance to set off chaos in motion. And boy, oh boy, have the Avalanche as a team had more than just a few small disturbances before the Avalanche tumbles down the mountain, destroying all in their way. What am I saying? I'm saying the Avalanche are about to have a run at the league, and everybody better watch the fuck out. This team is about to do something that no one is prepared for. Everybody's written them off because of the slow start. No one's paying attention to them right now. Suddenly, they'll be standing at the top, hoisting Lord Stanley's Cup after dominating everybody else. People aren't prepared for what's coming, and I can't wait. Anyways,
well,
hi,
Cory,
Dom.
you nailed it there. Hi. Glad to be here with you all again. And you're absolutely right. An avalanche. What is it? Yeah, it's a big mound of snow just waiting for the next pin to drop and to get sliding. But it also does not stop. It is an unstoppable force. So the only thing with the mountain is it is an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Which NHL hockey teams have a mountain as their logo? I don't know if any of them do. So I don't think any of them really have a chance, do they now?
Nope. The only team that's got a mountain for their logo and some of their alternates is, well, the Avalanche.
Naturally. And you know what? It's going to be exciting to watch. You mentioned things about what the league isn't ready for. They've been a little bit asleep. I don't think the fans are ready either for the fact that suddenly if Georgiev gives up 3 goals a game, it might just not matter, because if you have the Avs at full strength, it might be 5 or 6 goals they're putting in a game, and that is not an overstatement.
This is the Avalanche roster that we've been looking for ever since the Cup run, in my opinion. I think this is first of all, you have a lot of the cornerstone pieces that were involved to begin with to get you that last Stanley Cup. And now I think you finally found the depth pieces to replace what was lost. Casey Middlestat is finally being put between 2 top-line guys. Not that the people he's played with haven't been serviceable, but he's now finally getting the opportunity to flex the talent that everybody knows that he has and has already put on display. So one can only imagine what he'll get with top pairing line mates. Not to mention Nathan MacKinnon will be rejoined by his line mate Jonathan Drouin, and we already know what kind of magic can happen when those two are put on the ice together. It's gonna be something awesome. I am like a kid on Christmas waiting for this Friday. I am so unbelievably excited. Avalanche fans, if you're not watching the game this Friday, or if you're listening to this late and you didn't watch the game on Friday, go back and watch it, barring that we won. But I'm pretty confident that we're gonna throw down in this game. And as I texted Dom earlier today, the Washington Capitals are going, fuck, man, why did everybody have to come back against us? It's been a pleasant surprise going through this week, that's for sure.
Well, and I think it's perfect that you hit on Christmas there, because I remember if it was last episode or the one before when I said, let's just see where the Avalanche are by Christmas. We were wondering if it would be mid-November, late November when they'd get back to full strength. Well, it's looking more like the former, which means you'll have even more time. The Avs are currently sitting right around that like 15, 16 spot overall in the league, the last team in the wild card if the playoffs were to start today. I know, ridiculously early, but mark my words, come here Christmas Day, you'll be seeing the Avs as a top 5 team in the league based on their record. Assuming again, God forbid, no injuries, knocking on wood here.
I know, seriously.
But there's this roster, like you said, is an unbelievable combination of talent, and let's see if they can execute.
And I mean, you can call this team top heavy all you want. We'll get into the 3-headed monster, but of course, right now they're top heavy because everybody's been injured in their top 6. Well, not much longer here. And I mean, you look at Artturi Lehkonen, he's come back. He already has 6 points in 5 games already. So it just goes to show what an impact these players who have been missing have on this team. And so now you're getting all of them back at the same time. And I think for fans of other teams, obviously you're not necessarily reading that. All you see is like, oh, the Avalanche are struggling. Oh, goaltending's been bad. Oh, you see this, you see that. I don't think they're quite prepared as well as other teams for what's to come. Although I feel like maybe ownership and management of other teams are a little smarter and they've been keeping their eye on how things have been developing. But I needed to get that off my chest. I've been thinking about it all day and I'm frankly giddy with excitement. I didn't write any of that down, just came from the heart. So,
well, I don't want to interrupt your hype train because I think it's very valid. My only thing for those teams, their one shred of hope would be with so much change happening on the Avs roster, the best they can hope for is that it takes a little bit of time, the growing pains of everyone getting reacclimated and back to full speed. So that'd just be the one thing I'd wonder if maybe the Capitals have a better chance than whoever comes after them just because of that one game of readjustment period. So what are your thoughts on that, Corey? Do you think it's going to be right back in full speed, just like what you're saying, the Avs of the cup run days with all of that talent and just flow where they're all gelling together as one? Or do you think it might be a little choppy, they'll get the job done, and then the next game after will really look where the dominance comes in?
I think it's going to be pretty immediate. And the reason why is a few reasons. One, we've been told that Val Nichushkin, because obviously he was suspended rather than injured, is a workout machine. So he has not lost any step in the time that he's been suspended. And he's also thankfully been given the opportunity to practice with the team prior to coming in here. So he's familiar with his teammates and his line mates already. Artturi Lehkonen already came back and, as I mentioned, has 6 points in 5 games. So he's already producing at over a point per game, despite having shoulder surgery, and he didn't really get to practice, didn't have a training camp, came back immediately produced. And even though you have Casey Middlestat sandwiched between Nichushkin and Lehkonen, they had the opportunity to really start to get to know each other during a playoff run, which obviously is the most intense time in the NHL season. So I frankly don't see any reason why these guys can't come back and immediately start producing. But perhaps that's just over optimism on my part. It definitely wouldn't surprise me if Jonathan Drouin in particular was maybe a little slow just because of the nature of whatever his upper body injury was. But overall, I think these guys have had enough time to know and be together. And now that they're back together, it would not, I guess, to put it a bit more realistically, it would not surprise me if they came back and performed well, even in their first game back.
Well, I hope that is the case because it'll definitely make this podcast even more exciting than it has been. And I'm sure for all of the fans, they'll be having a wonderful time out here in Colorado as well.
And let me tell you, it's an exciting time right now. Avalanche are on a 3-game win streak, keeping up the home win streak. Nathan MacKinnon has his home point streak still rolling. Cale Makar is fucking insane. Mikko Rantanen is scoring goals out the wazoo. Everything's really nice right now. Knock on wood. No more injuries. Let's go. But Dom, I've been screaming into my microphone. Do you have any notes from around the league before we jump right into this crazy segment I planned for today?
Around the league.
Or anything else,
Not much to report on the Crosby Ovechkin trackers. It's been a slower week on that front. I believe Ovi might have scored 1 goal, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I did not have enough time to go double check his stats, honestly. Columbus, though, that team I've been tracking for all of you, that I've been quietly rooting for and hoping the best for over the course of this year, have regressed all the way down to the bottom and are one of the few teams that are actually behind the Sharks. And yes, folks, this is the biggest news I can give. The Sharks, once again, are not in last place or second to last place or third. They have at least 4 teams behind them on points, and they are tied with something like 6 or 7 teams with 5 wins on the season. So this season is already much better than last year in that we are not miles behind everyone else. Even if right now, as I'm watching this, we look miles behind New York in this game with 2 minutes left and the goalie pulled down 3-1. Let's see if we can score a goal now and get back into this one really late.
But hey, you have to say, at least your boys aren't giving up an obscene amount, even against, statistically and, physically better teams like New York. You only gave up 3, and especially with scoring being up, I'd say that's pretty commendable, even in a loss.
Yeah, I mean, Shesterkin actually just tried to go for a goalie goal. We had
a
player back on defense. He launched it from the crease all the way past the blue line, but we were able to intercept it. But it was he was trying to make it 4-1 himself, but alas, no dice for Shesty out in New York.
I have to say, we love a goalie goal, but I truly think there is no greater embarrassment for a team.
Yeah, I see. I don't know if it's embarrassing for the team who has it happen to, because I think it's so exciting for that goalie and it's so rare. It's hard to be embarrassed necessarily because it's not like the goalie is bad. It's not like you did anything wrong. It means you were selling out in the right positions, trying to get shot opportunities, trying to chase the puck down low, having people on the point at the corners, but not in the center of the ice past the red line because you've got all your guys on offense. So I could see it going both ways. In my opinion, it means you're doing the right thing. If a goalie goal happens, you're really putting the pressure on, and that goalie just happens to have, let's call it what it is. It's a lucky shot. How many times has it happened? I mean, trying to throw the puck across the ice, it's a hard thing to do. So I could see both sides of that. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it embarrassing though.
I don't know. I guess I don't disagree with what you said. The way I see it is, obviously, you as the team with the extra man, you have an extra man first of all. So the fact that the goalie has enough time to grab it and launch it down the ice to possibly get it in your goal is,
That's
in
fair.
my mind, no good. And it's like, how do you give that guy, when you're purposely trying to attack the net, that much time and space to launch it all the way down the ice to get it in the net? It just feels like you as a team are doing something wrong, especially with an extra man, if the goaltender can do that. But that's just my thoughts on the matter.
No, that's a good point. I think the only excuse, or what happened in this case of Shesterkin's attempt, was the puck took an odd bounce off the boards right to him. So with the chip and chase, the dump in, he had at least a second before any Sharks players were there just to be onside. So that's a rare specific case scenario, but I do agree with what you're saying, and it is embarrassing overall. Zibanejad did trip up Granlund on an entry, so it's now 6-on-4. So what would be more embarrassing, in my opinion, is if the Sharks gave that up now, or if they fail to score here with 30 seconds left. Because even just to make it 3-2, I would feel a lot better. And they just did.
Oh my
God! I'm
goodness.
saying it.
Oh my goodness.
Right in front from Fabian Zetterlund. There is 28 seconds left, and the game is not over.
Well, Dom, I think I have a leading question for you. It's something we've kind of talked about over the week, and I think you might already know what the question is before it even comes here, because it's been one of our main points of conversation. It started as a joke, but now it's heating up a little bit. How do you feel about the trade rumors of Mackenzie Blackwood coming to the Colorado Avalanche?
Well, the only person I want to hear them from is you, because you're my bro, you're my friend, you are the Avs faithful. Otherwise, I'm sick of hearing it. Blackwood was electric again in the pipes, between the pipes tonight in the goal crease. He has 32 saves on 35 shots, so still over a 900 save percentage. Even in what is currently a losing effort, he has still played very well, played admirably overall. And he had his first shutout on the year that I'm going to talk about on today's episode. So really, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't want him going anywhere. I know you and I have talked about it, but picture this out there for everyone. Picture this. you have all of this young offensive talent, Celebrini, Smith, Eklund. You have this loaded prospect pool with guys like Cardwell and such. Then you have Askarov and Blackwood as a 1A, 1B. Screw defense, which is the biggest Sharks issue. Let's just have the best goaltenders in the net who can make 40 saves a game, 80 games a year because they're switching off, they're getting rest. And then you have so much offense that can put up 4 goals a game. This is what I envision for the Sharks' future. This is how the Sharks make a cup run. So I implore General Manager Greer, please do not trade away Blackwood. He is a key to the future. So I understand rumors are going to rumor. They can't be stopped. The Avs fans want Blackwood because, I mean, I know you want him, Corey, because it would be a big improvement. And because it is a big improvement, that is why the Sharks cannot afford to let it go. This is what is keeping them in games more so than anything else is Blackwood. Like, I've talked about how Vanacek has done a great job overall this year as well. He's having a solid save percentage, keeping the Sharks in games. But even this week, he was on the wrong side of a couple losses. And one of them, I mean, against the Wild, when we were last covering this podcast live time, it was not pretty. So he has the capacity to sometimes have like the quality that Blackwood shows, but it's not consistent. So for the consistency that the Sharks need to become a winning team again, we need Blackwood. And if we're going to trade any goalie, it has to be Vanacek. And I just don't know what we can get for him at this juncture.
Yeah, and that's what's tough. And I mean, I feel the same way about Alexander Georgiev, who I will get into more later, who's been on the up and up. But it's like right now, my whole argument is if you wanted to trade him, who wants him right now? Who's taking that trade? Nobody. There's not a single team that I can think of that would take that trade right now, especially if it was a goalie swap. Like, why would you want to swap your better goalie for a worse goalie? That doesn't make sense. But I digress. I think that, speaking on something that you said, I think it'd be a fun poll question for this week. Would you rather have a very solid 1A, 1B duo or a true number one like Shesterkin or Hellebuck? And I know me and you have talked about it that I think I'd rather have the reliable 1A, 1B duo, even though you don't have the absolute best goaltender in the league. I think when both of your goalies can have that strong consistency, even if they're not the best, I would rather have that over the true number.
Well, 100%, because everybody's going to have off nights. And when we talk about goaltenders, it's about consistency. And even the best of them, even Shesterkin himself, who the Rangers did officially win the game 3-2, sad face. Even Shesterkin, who is this great, solid 1A, there is no 1B goaltender, even though he technically has Jonathan Quick behind him, which how about Jonathan Quick if he's going to be your number 2? But
seriously.
But, it's Askarov has aspirations to be that perfect Hellebuck style. You throw him out there 60 plus games a year to get you a win type of goaltender. That is what he wants to be. That is why he wanted to be traded. That's why he's on the Sharks now, is to try to get that opportunity. So, I mean, whether or not he would want to be part of a team with a 1A, 1B and get paid, he has to first make it to the NHL. So if there is a possibility, there is a window, a couple year opportunity where he could be the 1A and Blackwood's still the 1B. And if you have a 1A, 1B where your 1A could be a 60 plus game a year starter anywhere else in the league, that makes your 1A, 1B better than the average one anyway. Like if Blackwood is your 1B, I'm sorry, that's insanely good, because I mean, look at what he's doing now as our 1A. He is keeping the Sharks in games, close games that last year the Sharks were losing by 3+ goal differentials, that now they're only losing by 1 goal or losing in shutouts or overtime. Like these are close games. The Sharks, even if they're not as close as maybe I would like, it is such a big step forward compared to last year. And so we just can't afford to lose that right now, especially not until Askarov actually makes it to the NHL level. If Askarov was already on the active roster and starting and putting up even better performances than Blackwood, then I would be more open to, or at least understand the possibility of being willing to let Blackwood go. But Askarov is an unknown, and Blackwood has been unreal and really revived his career in San Jose. So there's no reason to risk that. It's not worth. I can't think of a trade return that we could get for Blackwood that would make it worth it to me. And that's where I hope management agrees and doesn't make that mistake, or what I believe to be a mistake.
And I can certainly understand it from your point of view. And I mean, even given his track record, you can never fully know how a goalie is going to perform in front of another system. I mean, with how the Avalanche have been playing recently, I would imagine that he'd probably be fine, but you don't ever really know. And of course, Blackwood's familiar with the Sharks goaltending coaches and the Sharks system. So hopefully, he can get some better D in front of him and doesn't have to make as many saves, because if he can make 40 saves, then he can definitely make 20. So I'm with you on that. But would it not make you so happy to see Blackwood raise the Stanley Cup at the end of this season with the Colorado Avalanche?
Make me so happy. It would make me so happy to see Blackwood hoist the Stanley Cup. I would rather see him wearing teal at the time and see Jaws in the crowd with that good Jaws music going on with the donna 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 donna. Like, come on, that atmosphere, that vibe would be unreal. I would fly out to San Jose just to be a part of the parade. It would be worth it, especially for the first time ever. Like, imagine this. What one means more? I understand for you, you're an Avs fan. You're going to be biased, and you're going to want him to hoist an Avalanche jersey.
Well, yeah, duh.
Wouldn't it be even more meaningful for him to have been the guy that got the Sharks over that finish line to get them their first ever Cup win? That would cement him, in my opinion. Especially if it was on his back as a goaltender. I feel like that would hold a greater value in some sense. I mean, yes, the cup is always the cup, but like we talked about with Ovechkin getting that bet with Gretzky to get his stick, that meant more than just any regular cup. So, something like that, I don't know if that plays in the mind of him as a goaltender, if he's just out there trying to win wherever he is. I feel like that's how most athletes are and should be. But in the back of your mind, you got to wonder if that has any extra meaning to be able to be the guy who can say, hey, I got this franchise over the line and finally on to the Stanley Cup for the first time ever. Really quickly, I do want to pivot back to something about Askarov when we talk about system. He has been electric in the AHL regular season, but when it comes to the postseason, he has crumbled under the pressure and has his goals against average and his save percentage have plummeted. And so that's just the one thing that is, for me, the additional risk of why there is no point in risking the future of the Sharks, especially when the window is opening. Like, it is a rebuild now, but the future is there where you can see in 3 years' time where a 5-year window opens where the Sharks can really be a winning team. Do you want to risk that on a goalie prospect who in the biggest moments has come up short? We know all of his potential, but in reality, in the biggest moments, he has come up short. When the pressure is on, when the teams are the best teams out there in the league, he has not been able to get over the finish line, and that's why Nashville was able to let him go. So I think until he proves he can win against those high caliber teams and let alone at NHL quality, I don't know if it's worth the risk to let Blackwood walk.
And you know what, Tom? I agree with you. I do. Everything you just said, I absolutely agree with you, especially on the storyline and the meaning. I mean, we're becoming small-time hockey media people, so we love a good storyline, and that would definitely be a fantastic one. I cannot lie to you. But wherever the chips happen to fall, I'll be happy. I'll just put it that way. How about that?
Yeah, you know what? I'll grieve if Blackwood does end up becoming an
Maybe it's just a
goaltender.
rental, because isn't he at the end of his contract here?
I don't have the answer to that one. If he is, then we should pay him soon and lock that up before he gets more expensive.
Because, I mean, it's like the Sharks aren't going to make the playoffs this year, so just give him to us at the trade deadline. We'll go and win. Then he has playoff experience and a cup pedigree. You guys sign him back, and you can have him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficulty, though.
And then
you pay him more.
We have Juice, and then we'll have Ilya Nabokov come over, and then it's sorted. We're fine.
Well, we'll see. What I will say is, if I will be happy for you if by whatever means Blackwood does become an Avalanche player, though I will have to grieve and be sad for the what I view as the best potential future for my franchise. So I'll have mixed emotions, but I will certainly be happy for you because I know how much it'll mean to you. And truly, if he was on the Avs, when we just talked about all the offense, the stars they have on defense as well, with Makar and Taze and all these players, like I think that goaltender is like the one thing missing from a true cup contender team that is like able to go out there and just compete with the Jets, who are somehow still 15-1. Like, what the fuck?
Make that 15-2, baby.
Oh, they lost today?
We'll get into that here in a second, actually.
Anyway, point being, they've got the goaltender. They are a defensive-minded team, as we've talked about, and yet they are just putting up more goals than anyone else. They are having an unreal start to the season. If anyone's going to compete with them, they need to have all three phases. The Avs are currently missing that third phase in net. So if Blackwood was to become an Avalanche player, I do think the Avs Cup odds would go up tremendously.
And, that's my point. But I understand, and I can just sense Dom from here. He's being very nice, and he's being very positive, but inside he's like, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. Don't take my goaltender.
Into existence.
Don't take my goaltender. Yeah, I understand. Well, I have a really big thing that I have spent a few days working on. So, Dom, do you have any other notes or anything you'd like to say as we've kind of had an extended intro here? Because we've had some good conversations. So anything you'd like to say before we hop into this segment that I've prepared?
Other than don't take my goaltender? Nah, You're good to go.
All right. Well, I also want to preface that you are free to interject at any point here, but I'm going to start rolling. Well, as I just mentioned, the Jets are now 15-2. They have lost to the Lightning 4-1 tonight. Thank God. But there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it, unfortunately. But the Jets are a wagon, which leaves me with one question. Why? Why are the Jets, who made no major additions and in fact had subtractions in the offseason, come out to the best start in NHL history? And how do the Avalanche compare? You didn't think I'd write something about other teams without including the Avalanche, did you?
Well, I would have to say the question here that we might need to do more research on for the next episode is this improvement from the Jets because of their own prospect pool development, and it went unnoticed, it flew below the radar that they could have such losses and replace them with almost better additions internally. But I'll let you get back to it and bring the Avs into this analysis.
We'll see if I have an answer for you, but here I am with my first major attempt at a more in-depth or major analysis, my hockey psychology impression, breaking down why the Jets have come out to such a hot start this season, and how do the Avalanche compare, and where are they headed, factoring in the last few games, and what does history tell us? I believe that there are three primary factors that we can take into account when when asking ourselves why teams are doing so well or so terrible. One is numbers. Analytics and stats can tell us a lot. But if we only relied on the numbers, then the outcomes would always be certain, and hockey and sports in general are marred by uncertainty. Second is the eye test. And within that, you can toss a team's system, a combination of tangibles and intangibles. It can tell us how a team is achieving their numbers. We have to watch a game and a team to truly identify and see what's working and what isn't. Every team could use the same offensive, defensive, neutral zone, and so on systems, but not every team could make it work and integrate it successfully if it doesn't play to the strengths and effects of their players. Finally, it's the X factor. A majority of the time, this is a player, set of players, or type of play that allows a team to thrive above the rest, and the most successful teams have something or someone that other teams simply don't. This can be both tangible or intangible, analytical or statistical, or a combination of everything. The Jets. Let's begin with the NHL's current number one team, who has been hot since the first puck drop of the season. What's going on? Well, as of the Jets' 14th game, they were first in almost every major statistical offensive and defensive category. First in goals per game at 4.5, first in goals against per game at 2.14, first in power play operating at 42.1, and first in team save percentage at .925. And I'd like to specify 2 games later, not much has changed. Not only that, but they lead the league in shot percentage at 14.3%. In addition, they lead the league in PDO at 107.2. Now, I just threw a lot of terms and numbers that change almost daily at you, but what do they all mean? Let's start with goals for and shooting percentage. Goals for is simple. The Jets have the highest average amount of goals they put in the back of the net per game. The next closest team is the Hurricanes at 4.21. Shooting percentage tells us how so many of them are getting to the back of the net. That shooting percentage tells us how often the shots the Jets are taking are ending up in the back of the net. A 14.3% is ridiculous, as the average for a team usually levels out at around 10%. The highest ever that I could find was 12%. The caveat is that shooting percentage is likely to come down. History dictates that the larger the sample size, the more the shooting percentage levels out. But the fact that this isn't an individual effort, but is an overall team average. Moreover, while the Jets' top scorers are driving the bus, it is a team effort across the lineup. Their top scorer, Kyle Connor, is scoring 11.22% of the team's points, and Mark Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers are hovering above 10% of the team's points, with two of the team's top 5-point getters being defensemen as well. All of this to say that production is coming from across the Jets' lineup as all but two of their skaters have registered at least 1 point on the season. This Jets team is getting more shots on goal than league average, and more are going in than anybody else. Now, let's talk about PDO. What is it? It is the sum of a team's shooting percentage and save percentage multiplied by 10, and it comprises what most like to refer to as the luck stat. The theory is most teams will end up around 100, and the higher a team is above 100, the quote luckier unquote they are, and may not be as good as they seem. And further below 100, the quote unluckier unquote the team is, and they are likely better than what is currently being seen. Am I calling the Jets bad or just lucky? Not at all. But what I am saying is right now, pucks, bounces, shots, etc. are going their way, and they're going in. I'll take a breath here before we hop into the eye test. Dom, what do you have?
I would say it's a fluke either way. It was the first time in history to go 14-1 in a team's first 15 games. So it's never been seen. So no matter what, the PDL is going to be above 100 and suggests that there should be some regression to the mean, some law of averages that brings them back down to earth, even just a little bit, because obviously that projection would have them be surpassing what the Bruins set. The Bruins just a couple of years ago, just recently, boom, break the record for the most ever points scored and as a team. And then right now, they'd be on pace to smash that. So we do expect it to come back down. That is one. I think when you get to the eye test, that's important. I would have a question. You haven't talked about it yet, but their power play percentage, that sounds to me like it was higher than what Edmonton had last year. And Edmonton's power play last year was insane. It was unstoppable. So if they are somehow managing to do better, I want to understand how. What is the scheme? I would want to look at the tape and see, are they modeling after what Edmonton did, or did they see what Edmonton did and then find a way to improve upon it and change the way the league approaches penalties, power plays, penalty killing, all of it?
Yeah, so I'm just giving it a quick look here. So the Edmonton Oilers power play overall last season was operating at the end of the season at 26.34%, but that's not, I think it was actually the year before that. It was just jack shit.
Yeah,
there it is. It was the 2022-23. They were operating at 32.36, and the average that year was 21.31. That's insane.
Well, in most of the year, they were also hovering closer to 35 to 37, earlier on in the year at a percentage range. And then obviously, like we talk about with the regression, it naturally evened out a little bit just to get to 32. So imagine that this is, let's say, an extra 5% ahead of what that Edmonton Oilers team, even if it regresses some, would we be talking about a 35% plus power play percentage over the course of a season? That would be unreal if that is the case.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that playoff power play percentage.
Well, because their power play was really good during the regular season, but in the Stanley Cup final, it really fell back off. Like they were able to convert Edmonton was on their power play in a lot of key moments during the season, earlier in the playoffs, but by the end of the playoffs, they had been figured out. Their scheme, their call it a gimmick, whatever you want to call it. Teams were able to have looked at enough tape and figure it out enough to keep Edmonton to reduce their advantage. Let's not say keep them out. They still scored goals on the power play, but their advantage, their conversion rate at the very end of the season when you got to the cup was decreased significantly.
But no, you're exactly right. A team operating at 42%, and to put that into perspective, the next closest team in terms of power play is Vegas and the Avalanche at 32.6 and 31.6%. So the Jets are operating at a power play of 10% nearly higher than the second place, which is absolutely absurd. So we would expect that to also come down because it's just not something that's sustainable in the long term. And I mean, if it was, then yeah, they're easily going to break the record. But I mean, history will always help us dictate what's going to happen. So unless it's a true anomaly, you just can't expect that to continue.
And for everyone listening, this is why the PDL matters, because it is an anomaly, and that is the stat trying to read between the lines on the anomaly and predict whether a team is on the up or is expected to regress in the future just to the mean. It's not even that they're regressing and going to be bad. It just means that their all-time great comes down to a more perceivable, attainable sense of great, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And again, I'm not at all implying that the Jets are only lucky or only bad, because as the saying goes, you have to be good to be lucky. And this Jets team's no holds barred. They are a fantastic team right now, and they have earned the #1 ranking in every fucking power rankings list, rightfully so. But hopefully, the eye test can help us explain it a little bit. But the PDO stat, as you just mentioned, Dom, is really important in measuring, if a team is playing above their means right now. Because if you look back on previous seasons, and I'll get into it actually, you know what? I'll save it because I have it mentioned a little later about the Jets' last couple seasons PDO, where it's ended up landing. So we can talk about it a little more in a little bit, actually.
You got it. You're leading this. You're the MC, my guy.
All right. Well, the eye test. The Jets aren't spending an excess amount of time in the offensive, defensive, or neutral zone. In fact, at the time of writing, they are pretty much even with the league averages according to NHL Edge. So what are they doing differently that other teams aren't? Well, the Jets are skating more than other teams in all strength scenarios. For this team, it means they are getting to their coverage, their spots, their forecheck, and putting in the extra effort to create extended pressure to create the situations that they want, which is their 2-1-2 O-zone. This means they have two forwards down low, a forward in the middle, and their D-men up high. The two forwards battle hard down low to create a turnover that they can then feed to the one forward in the middle or slot of the ice. And if something happens, they have their two D-men up high for support. And with the amount of movement that the Jets are creating in their skates, all men on the ice are almost always getting back to continue pressuring and lend that support. The Jets are also dominant off the rush because they are intelligent in the neutral zone. Their D-men take away space in the center of the ice and leave teams with limited options to get through. Then, because of the pressure and support system the Jets create, they can quickly get themselves out of their defensive zone and up the ice into favorable conditions. A side note, if you want to actually see this in action and this portion explained probably a little better than I'm doing it, go watch Hockey Psychology's video on it, and I'll link it in the description. He's fantastic, as I've already mentioned. But to summarize and to put it simply, the Jets are really, really good at winning puck battles. Now, one thing that Hockey Psych didn't mention in his video is chemistry. And by the way, I meant to write it. He really helped me in writing this section and breaking it down in, I think, a clearer way. But one reason that some teams fail to find success is a constant rotation in staff, whether that's on or off the ice. Just look at the Buffalo Sabres, I think, for a great example. Their current coach, the Jets, was their assistant coach and already familiar with their system, Scott Arniel, that Rick Bowness put into place. That has made them so strong before. On their roster, the Jets have virtually no players who have been with the team for less than 2 seasons. They have 9 players, most in their top 6, who have been with the team for 5+ years. 7 of those being drafted by the organization, in addition, as you mentioned, Dom, to another 2 young draft players being developed and playing for the team currently, all according to Puckpedia. These guys know each other, and they know each other. These guys know each other, and that can generally These guys know each other, which can greatly aid to their efficiency and effectiveness and output on the ice.
Well, they know each other and they know the system, like you said. If there hasn't been a lot of coaching turnover, if there hasn't been a major change in the fundamental philosophy, think about this. You go to college for 4 years to study some degree, and then you can go for additional years to get a master's, and then another year or 2 after that to get a PhD. What are you doing? Over time, you are building on your knowledge, getting better and better, getting more precise with the details, slowly but surely improving and just building your confidence, your strength in the ability to wield that knowledge. That is the same with any system. It is hockey. If it is the same system you are playing here, over time, you're just going to get better at it. And the important thing that I would like to call it here is, yes, there's chemistry. There's also just the culture of hustle. And like you said, with puck battles, getting to the puck fast, you're saying that they're not necessarily spending more time in zones, but they're skating more. On their shifts, they're covering more mileage on the ice than what other teams might cover. That requires a huge amount of conditioning and, as I said, hustle. It reminds me of when we think of the Miracle on Ice hockey team from 1980. What did the coach do? What did he do? He brought in a bunch of kids, taught them all a new system, got them all to buy in, build the chemistry together, and play hard with a lot of hustle. Condition, learn the system, and play it over and over until it became second nature. And eventually that's what it took to be able to stand up to, at the time, the best team in the world in the Soviet hockey team. It's something similar that I think is a more widely known example that anyone can find on Disney and watch Miracle, because it is a phenomenal hockey movie. For anyone who's getting into hockey as a sport, I would just recommend it as a movie that you would enjoy. But I think it also applies to what we're seeing with the Jets, with their system, and like I said, how much mileage, how much hustle they have on the ice.
And quickly, I saw that movie for the first time not too long ago. I really enjoyed it. I'm finally getting around to watching my hockey movies. But before I forget, to follow up on your point, I think you're exactly right. And what's great about, the hustle that you're talking about is it's both an intangible and a tangible stat. I'm pulling this information, at least this part of it, from NHL Edge. You can see that the Jets skaters overall are being tracked and skating more than other teams. You can see it numerically, but you can also see it with the eye test. You can see how they're setting up their zone pressure and their support systems so that way they leave teams with nowhere to go, nowhere to pass. But then also if somebody gets a puck knocked off their stick, someone else can swoop in and get it right back. So you're exactly right in your analysis there, Dom.
Well, and I do have to pivot because I can't believe you hadn't seen that movie until just recently.
I
I
know.
watch this movie at least once a year since I was 10, so we got to set up just like this, got to be a holiday for us where you and I get together and we watch Miracle on Ice, because it is a phenomenal movie.
It is.
Love
it is really good.
And it's not just for hockey fans. Like, I mean,
just a
if you're
good
getting
movie.
into hockey, it's just a really well done movie based on a true story. And I think it's a big part of our history that sometimes people overlook, because that was a big
major
event in the latter period of the Cold War. Like, this is post, we've already done all of Apollo and everything and won the race to the moon, even though, speaking as the guy who knows, we technically lost all the other races as far as space is concerned to the Russians. Not everybody realizes that. So this was a big one for the U.S. to win a sport that we previously had no luck in, no experience in, no business winning. And now you look at it and you think, oh, the U.S., Canada, these are the top teams you expect to win in the world. These are the teams you see in the Four Nations face-off. But think just not too long ago, I mean, maybe it's a little long ago, but 40 years ago, it was a very different story.
Yeah. And I mean, we could definitely go on and on about why that Miracle on Ice game was so important beyond just sports. But I mean, there's plenty of videos and documentaries out there that I think already break that down for us. But if anybody else out there wants to hear me and Dom pull out some research and create that segment for you, we absolutely will. But yes, I agree with Dom. Go watch Miracle. Oh, fun fact though, Dom, I have been to the Olympic Museum in Colorado Springs. Super awesome. And the Miracle on Ice scoreboard is there. So I have seen the scoreboard.
Oh, very nice. I feel like I have been, and it was just so long ago before I was actually living in Colorado. So I need to take a field trip down there
It is
anyway and just
definitely
go
worth.
experience.
It's definitely worth. It's a cool place. Well, moving on, the X Factor. Dom, before I even say who or what the X Factor is, who or what do you think it is? Just give me a one simple answer. Don't need to go into detail. Who or what do you think the Jets'
If
X
we're still
Factor is?
talking the Jets, it is
Yeah.
100% Connor Hellebuck. No, full
You
stop,
are
no
fucking
question.
exactly right. And my first statement is, honestly, anyone with eyes can see that the X Factor for this Jets team is Connor Hellebuck. Last year's Vezina winner is already poised for another run at the trophy. Hellebuck is above league average in every major statistical category for a goaltender and sits in the 99th percentile for both goals against average and save percentage according to NHL Edge, rocking a 1.92 GAA and a .934 save percentage in each of those respectively. Even at mid-range and high danger areas where he's a little weaker, he is performing better than average. When everything breaks down around him, which is rare, the Jets can count on Hellebuck to be the brick wall that bails them out in nearly every scenario, even against highly offense-oriented teams like the Avalanche, at least in the regular season. Not only that, but hold on. Not only that, but 76.9% of Hellebuck's games, he has a save percentage above 900, well above the league average of 52.8%. The man is at the top of the goalie game, and he has a crucial factor of goaltending that Dom and I constantly emphasize: consistency. The Jets, rightfully, locked this man up, and unlike other goaltenders who, after getting their big payday, seem to regress, Hellebuck is always strong and reliable, and you can get game-saving performances out of him night after night.
So I have a question for you because I haven't looked at the split stats side by side. From what it sounds like, it does sound to me like Hellebuck is leading the league in most of those stats. My question would be, from everything we've seen, if you had to pick one today for your Vezina, would you pick Hellebuck or would you pick Dostal?
Man, the only reason I wouldn't pick Dostal right now is simply because the Ducks are still losing despite him, putting in game after game. I feel like if this Ducks team was just a little better, just to be a bit more middling, I would say yes. And it's crazy that we have to kind of consider the team around a player to nominate them for an award. But I mean, I can't lie. When you see the things that Hellebuck is doing right now, I can't not say him at this current moment in time.
And that's totally fair. And it was a hard question on purpose because I think on individual merit that Dostal would be a deserving finalist, 100% top 3 Hellebuck as well.
I agree.
I mean, maybe just for the sake of argument, let's say Shesterkin's the third. People could make a case for a guy like Ottinger. There's other goalies in the league who could make a case for it, but let's just throw Shesterkin as the third there.
I think that's a rightful nomination.
I think I agree. If the Ducks are above 500, though, I do think just pure individual effort, because of how much more he has been asked to do with all of those high danger chances you've mentioned in the previous episode, I do think that would be a tie-breaking factor that would make me lean Dostal. But until such a time, I mean, until the Jets regress a little bit to the mean, as long as they are still 10 plus wins above their loss count and they can just keep holding pace with this for a while and extend it out as the season goes on, make it 15, make it 20, further out in the next, let's say 20 games of the season, then you got to go with Hellebuck. He has been unreal, like you said. He's been a true Vezina caliber goalie for multiple seasons in a row now that he has been in that discussion consistently. I really don't know what happened to him during the playoffs last year, but it clearly is in the rearview mirror for him. Or on the flip side, he is using it as a thing of spite for himself, where he is just coming out with a vengeance, playing some unreal goaltending with those stats you provided.
Who's to say? And we'll talk a bit more about playoffs here in just a bit. But I mean, you're right. When it comes to the Jets, their overall team save percentage, as I mentioned, is high, and it's been high for the last few seasons. So, I mean, the team around Hellebuck has done a phenomenal job at supporting that defensive effort. So it's not like he's having to go out of his way to be amazing, but he is. And as you can see, he's letting in very little on the off chance that, the Jets system is breaking down. Because the Jets are still letting shots through. The game against the Avalanche is evident of that. So, I mean, in games like that, that's where you really see Hellebuck shining. Whereas, you have the Ducks that have probably a team save percentage of 0.2. And to Dostal's credit, he's still standing tall. So I can definitely agree with part of your argument. It's a tough sell, but unfortunately, with just how the awards are kind of tilted towards certain attributes, you just could never see Dostal winning it on such a losing team.
Yeah, the only argument I could see is because he is facing so many extra shots, he is making so many more saves. But again, you're right. The other factors that are the intangibles.
But could you not argue that for Blackwood as well, though?
I mean, sure, but I love Blackwood, but purely on merit, the performances from Dostal have been better 1-to-1, in my opinion.
For sure. Well, Dom, we talked about some playoffs and, some weaknesses. This Jets team, while seemingly unbeatable in nearly every facet, isn't perfect. No team is, not even the Avalanche. So where are there holes in the Jets system, and what can history tell us about where they're headed? Graphically, if we compare this Jets team to the best regular season team ever, the 2022-23 Boston Bruins, we can see that on NHL Edge, they are very similar. And in fact, the Jets are outperforming that Bruins team in some aspects. Why does this matter? Well, the Boston Bruins of 2022-23, if we believe the numbers and everything we saw, they should have steamrolled everyone on their way to the Stanley Cup. But, Dom, that's not what happened, was it?
No, it is certainly not. And that's where I was referencing is the collapse in the playoffs. It seems, maybe not as guaranteed as what Toronto collapses every year, where they make it to the first round and no further.
Toronto fans catching strays.
Canada and Canada crime. I know all the Winnipeg fans are happy about it.
What is it?
But I don't know if it was their defense that fell apart more, or if it wasn't Hellebuck out there. He looked like a shell of himself in last year's playoffs.
Wait, hold that thought. We'll get to it here in a second. We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. I know what you're about to say, but we're going to get to it. So hold it in your brain. The 2023-24 Jets were one of the best defensive teams ever. And going into the first round against the Avs, I believe their team save percentage was at .94 at that time. Every game should have been a low-scoring, tightly contested affair. But that's not what happened. Everything we talked about here can tell us a lot. But as we mentioned, sports are an unpredictable monster. We can have everything measured, analyzed, understood down to the smallest detail, and the outcome of a contest should seem obvious to us. We have to revisit that PDO stat once again, as well as the shooting percentage. The Jets, as previously mentioned, lead the league in PDO. So right now, that means bounces are just going their way. Pucks are landing on their sticks, and everything they are shooting at the net is going in. Am I attributing all of their success to just luck alone? No, of course not. But history dictates, as we've already mentioned, that this stat will come down along with their shooting percentage. Last year, their shooting percentage ended at 10.4%, right around league average, and their PDO was 102.2. The year before, it was 100.5. So recent history in this current Jets system that they've been utilizing tells us that this shooting percentage will level out and come down, as well as their luck. This has to be the case because what I believe will remain consistent is their team save percentage. Aha, I did remember. Last year, they ended the year with a .94 save percentage at 5-on-5 and a .918 in all situations, which was well above league average, and it was strong the prior year as well. This is why we hammer home the point that the Jets are a strong defensive team, because their system, their stats, and their X factors all point to that being the case, even though right now they are also scoring better than everyone. Stats and numbers change with every game, so by the time you hear this, it'll be different. But let's look at the playoffs, as Dom and I keep alluding to. Last year, they lost to the Avalanche in the first round in 5 games, letting in a historic 5+ goals a game. The year before that, lost in the first round in 5 games to the Vegas Golden Knights. The year before that, they missed the playoffs. The last time the Jets made it far in the playoffs in a non-COVID year was 2017-18, when they made it to the Western Conference Final and lost to the Vegas Golden Knights in 5 games. Their all-time playoff save percentage across their entire history is .899, including the Thrashers. And their all-time playoff shooting percentage is 8.7%. Connor Hellebuck, the team's X factor overall career postseason save percentage, is a respectable .910 and a GAA of 2.85. That's accounting for the strong up years. But when referencing the last 2 first-round exits, his save percentages have been well below 900 and a GAA exceeding 3 or more. We don't quite have the time to get into the weeds as to why there is such a consistent regression for this team when the playoffs roll around, because I don't fully know either. But perhaps a session for another day. Overall, this Jets team is strong. One of the best we've seen from them and in the NHL regular season, period. I'll be curious to see what remains consistent and what regresses as the season goes on, as we are only 15 to 16 games in at this point. It's around Christmas time that we really begin to see things shape up for what they truly are. All right, Tom, go.
Well, once again, hence why I've talked about the Avs by Christmas. Hellebuck looking like a shell of himself out there. And I don't know if it's that he's a step slower or he just looks like he's sick out there, just not moving the same way, or if it's the defense in front of him and the fact that they are just playing better teams. I think that's what it comes down to. When you are playing teams once, one game here or there, you're not playing them in a series. Every game, there's less pressure. It's a little bit more losable, and then you're on to the next one. You're not living on it. You're not focused on it. You're also not paying as much attention to the film and learning from it, because you have new film to look at for the team you're about to play, not the team you just played. When you're playing the highest caliber of teams and are also simultaneously having started hot and are regressing to the mean, you are going backwards as other teams are going forwards. And not only that, you are going backwards against the best teams in the league. When we get to the playoffs and we're talking 8 teams per conference, per half of the league, 16 total teams, you're already cutting the league in half and playing the top teams. Then you're playing them in series, and you're playing them multiple times in a row, both on your home ice and their home ice. So losing one at home hurts a lot more than it does in the regular season. There's not 40 other games to compensate with. And there's also not another bunch of games to learn. There are a bunch of games to learn from, which there aren't necessarily when you're talking about matchup specific. And so when we talk about how you mentioned the Jets system of the 2-1-2, it has been a really good system, and it can be hard to beat in the league in the regular season. But I wonder if teams have started to figure it out for the playoffs, or starting the way I talked about the Oilers gimmick, or just their ability, their patterns for the power play, with enough experience playing game after game against a team and enough footage that you can review and learn from, it becomes easier to predict a team's tendencies. It becomes easier to counteract that. And I don't know if the Jets have the I don't know if it's about top end talent. I don't know if it's about an offensive X factor. I don't know what it is, but there's something there that has been missing, that at that next step of the competition that they fall asleep at the wheel. They fall short. There's so many metaphor options here to choose from. And there's no clear reason why, other than we can just say their stats project that they are slightly overperforming. But nonetheless, even if it's just slight, you said like 100.5 on the PDL. It's not that far off. They should be in these games. It should be, when I've talked about the Sharks losing by 1 instead of losing by 3 or more, these games should be close. Connor Hellebuck is not a man who gives up 5+ goals a game, let alone 6 in like 2 periods. Like, he is the guy who has less than a 2 goals a game average right now.
Mhm.
So and it's a goaltender. It's not like there's a system that a team can learn on the footage. All they can do is shoot for the same corners in the 5-hole like they've practiced ever since they were children. So it's not like you can learn a goaltender system or adapt to that. It has to be the system in front of him. That much is clear to me. But obviously, you could argue the pressure. Is it the conditioning of playing the same team? Is there a mental factor of it that is just a real X factor that can't be seen or really quantified, and it varies from team to team? Like, we don't know the answer. Corey, you might have something to add to that or a sense, but it is something that we could spend multiple episodes trying to figure out and still not come up with a clear answer.
Exactly. And I think that's ultimately the tough part about it, and the intangibles that we talk about. Sometimes it's not necessarily easy to identify what's going wrong, but I guess that's the GM's job. But I do want to mention, to Connor Hellebuck's credit, in, let me see how many playoff seasons he's had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In 4 out of the 6 playoff appearances he has had a save percentage above 900. It is actually only in these most recent playoff appearances that he's really regressed and struggled. However, something of note is that there has never been a playoff appearance where he has had a, goals against average under 2. They're always over 2. His lowest was 2.23 in 2020-21. So overall, he's had good performances, but in these last few years, he has somehow regressed in the playoffs. And yet, even in the years, for example, his best year was in 2020-21, so that COVID year, I believe, he was sitting at a .931 and a 2.23 save percentage, both best in both categories, and that team still lost. And another thing that's interesting here is that the Jets team, in a lot of their playoff performances, their overall save percentage dips below 900 also. Their overall team save percentage in the playoffs is, I think I mentioned, .899. There has only been a single season, and that was last year when they lost in the first round against the Avs, that their shooting percentage has been above 10%. Every other year, it's been below that, with some years being as low as 5.5. Now, that's kind of an anomaly. They sit around 8 to 9%, I would say, but that's below the average. And I mean, those small percentage points can really make a difference in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is surprising to see, or maybe that is a sign of the offense that we've seen this year that we were missing. The fact that it was actually up last year when it came to the playoffs, but that doesn't explain the defensive lapse, especially when their system is built on defense. So
Yeah. And I mean, it tells you just how different the playoffs versus regular season is. Because as I always say, you can have the best regular season team in history. It does not matter when the playoffs roll around. Yes, regular season performances can certainly help us when it comes to trying to predict the playoffs, but I've kind of learned after watching hockey for the last few years that it's very rare that you can predict the playoffs. I think one of the few exceptions is last year's Panthers team. I think they were pretty much a lock to win it, and they did. And the year the Avalanche won it, I think everybody had them as a top pick to win it as well. But it's hard to really pin it down. And I mean, ultimately, I don't know. And again, to any Jets fans who are listening, there are none of you. I'm not trying to shit on your team. I am just reading it for what it is.
Yeah, it is the reality of the situation. We're not trying to shit on the Jets here.
It's weird. I want you to know I think it's weird. They should not be that way, and I want to know why. That's why I did this, but I don't know.
Yeah, it should not be this way. Like you said, I myself picked the Jets to, rather than losing to the Avs in 5, I picked them to beat the Avs in 5 on my bracket last year.
That's fucked up.
As you know. Hey, you saw my bracket.
I didn't remember that part. I didn't remember that part. That's fucked up.
It's no hate to the Avalanche. It's just for the Jets fans that are listening, I did believe in y'all, and now I mean, I got to be proven wrong now. I can't pick the Jets when it comes to the playoff time until they prove me they can win. Just like I refuse to pick Toronto. They're going to catch some friendly fire again. It's just it's how it's got to be until you guys win a first round. You don't got my pick anymore. I gave you a shot. And I'll be picking the Avs here on out because A, they're going to be better, and B, Corey, I love you and I don't want you to hurt me.
Don't pick us. Keep saying we're going to lose. It's what propels us to win.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe that's what I did to Carolina last year because last couple of years, as you know, but for everyone online, I've been high on the Carolina-Dallas combo of the former Sharks players, just rooting for either Pavelski or Bernsey to get on the cup, and regrettably, I don't think either of them is going to ultimately be able to do so. It's just my own sad prediction. So maybe me hating on the Hurricanes this year will be what it finally does it.
Maybe so. Well, Dom, I have my comparison for the Avalanche here. I just want to let you know, or everybody, I'm going to do my Avalanche section here, and then I'm going to hand you off to Dom. Dom, when I hand them off to you, my headphones are wireless, so I can still hear you. I have to get up and quickly run and do something, so just warning you in advance. So when you start your section, I'm going to hop up and I'm going to run and go do this, but I can still hear what you're saying, so I'll come back with any additions that I have.
Sounds good. You got it.
So, where do the Avalanche fit in? Let's actually start with the eye test here before getting into the numbers of the Avs. The Avalanche, and I approach this a little differently because I actually have been going to a few games. I've been watching them. So I approached it a little bit more traditionally as how I've broken down the Avs before. But the Avalanche are about to become a much healthier team and a much better one, as they will have their entire top 6 present at Friday's game. I feel the game against the Jets was actually a pivotal turning point, despite it being a loss. The biggest reason why the Avalanche couldn't score on Hellebuck is because they didn't have someone to take his eyes away like they did in the playoffs. The man himself said it, that he couldn't see half the pucks that went past him. But this game had to be a massive confidence booster for Alexander Georgiev, who has continued to build on that confidence in each subsequent game. He has begun to once again show his ability to lock it down as games go on, and allow the Avalanche a chance to come back into these games, even in those that the Avalanche have had slow starts in. That has been a major point of weakness. The Avalanche are getting scored on first, and that's currently happening often and early on in games. It takes them a period to get their legs, and while they don't look awful out there in the first, they need to find a way to score first, or at least stop the other team from scoring first in the first 2 minutes. The caveat to that is that the comeback nature and culture of the Avalanche has quickly returned as their offense has found ways to take back over games, pull ahead, and stay ahead. However, it isn't just their offense that's buzzing, but their defense as well. Against the Kings, they limited them to just 15 shots on goal. That was 9 in the first period, 0 in the second, and just 6 in the third. As I've touted, you don't need your goaltender to be the best if you're never in your own end. And to the Kings' credit, they looked dangerous when they were in the offensive zone, but their chances were limited. So the trade-off is they played gritty man-on-man hockey against the Avs, and they did a superb job clogging passing lanes, stripping pucks, poke-checking, and shutting down an elite power play. But that's what's been so exciting about watching the Avs recently. is it feels like they take lessons from every game and they use it to make themselves better and create a system that plays to their strengths and helps cover for their weaknesses. There is no denying that goaltending is a major point of contention for this team. But if we keep getting exactly what we're getting right now with only a couple going in, even if it's on limited shots, but after that, nothing else gets through, I'm confident. But what about the games where more than one gets through, like against Carolina? Well, I think it's about context. There is a difference between letting in 4 on 8 shots and 4 on 31 shots, especially against a high offense team, at least right now, like the Hurricanes. It's the difference in tone between dude and dude. Tom, are you there? Uh-oh. Everybody, I think we have lost Dom. Oh, he's muted.
Oh my God, I was on mute.
Oh my goodness.
I was on mute.
Oh my goodness.
I was on mute because I'm an idiot.
It's all good. What do you got, Dom?
Oh, I was just saying how your emphasis on getting ahead early in games is important to highlight, because that has been something that the Sharks have struggled with, that they are getting better at, I think. I mean, they've been scoring first in games more often. They haven't been able to finish out or close the deal on it in every game, but I think that's where the Avs have a bit of an advantage, and I would expect to see them continue to perform better over the course of the season. So I think you hit the nail on the head that it is important to get yourself into games and not start at a deficit, because then as the game goes on, if all you're doing is improving, if you start at a higher baseline, you will have a higher range of outcomes.
Yeah. Now, let's look at the numbers. First, my favorite one. The Avalanche currently have leaders or are tied for the lead in 3 different categories with 3 different players. Goals leader, Mikko Rantanen. Points by a defenseman, Makar. And overall points leader, McKinnon, the 3-headed letter M monster. You can say this team is top heavy all you want, but when they can completely take over a game, I'm not really complaining.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the 3-headed monster, you talk about the depth that they also have when you think of Casey Middlestat and where he's been playing. I mean, let alone with Makar, and just his stats this season have been unreal. So you've got all this offense from anywhere on the ice, literally from any of the 5 players on the ice who are not the goaltender. You have a goal scoring opportunity with your top 2 lines. Anyone, anytime. And is that top heavy? Sure. But it also, like I said earlier, is when you had these other 3rd and 4th line guys being pushed up a line to the 2nd, the 3rd line, even some of them on the 1st line while these players were injured, they got experience against better players, and they were still holding their own decently well. So now that they're back on their reasonable lines, playing competition that is a little bit more balanced to them, that they might even be better than, I think it comes back again to the surprise of that the Avs' depth is actually better than it gets credit for.
Yes, and especially when that gets fully healthy as well, because we're still missing a few on that end of things. But I think you're exactly right. That experience higher up is definitely going to lend itself when they're finally able to play a more depth role. Well, the Avalanche's current PDO stat is 96.8, to no one's surprise. Their team save percentage is well below average at .899% at 5-on-5 and .854% overall. However, their shooting percentage has begun to rise and sits at 11.3%, over the 10.6% average. It isn't a shock that this Avalanche team has been unlucky, even in games that they were losing. They were throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the net, but things simply weren't going in. High shot volume in all situations, but no goals. But that is beginning to shift around. They currently sit tied for 9th in goals for at 3.47, but you can expect this to rise with a fully healthy top 6. Their power play is 3rd best at 31.6%, and their PK, while showing flashes of greatness, is abysmal at the moment, operating at only a 72.5% for 27th in the league. Special teams matter. And if this team wants success in the playoffs, they need to ensure that that is something that they prioritize going forward. It's been a point of frustration when the Avalanche will have a series of good shifts, build momentum, only to take a stupid penalty and then get scored on and lose it all. There is no denying, moving forward, there is no denying that goaltending is an issue, and I won't ignore it. but our sample size is still small, and I've already shared plenty of stats and facts on Georgiev previously for all to hear and see. But if you want a new one, he is set for the lowest goal save above expected ever, I believe, at around -48. That's bad, obviously. But let's wait and see, plain and simple. Will the Avalanche get another goalie? It is incredibly possible, but I do want to see how it all shakes out with a fully healthy lineup in front of the net. I think the Avalanche, as I already mentioned, are poised for a run, both in the regular season and in post. And while the numbers might not all show it yet, they look like a team that can compete with the top ones in the league. And that was before getting healthy, once they finally found cohesion. Now, it's not all sunshines and rainbows, and there are weaknesses and holes. And of course, I'm a homer, and I will highlight the strengths at the forefront, but there is always improvements to be made. And I think this team knows that. Wow. There's always improvements to be made, and I always think this team knows that, and it's what makes them continuously great.
Absolutely. And something you said there that's important is when talking about special teams, when we talk in other sports about playing all three phases of the game, typically offense, defense, special teams. Well, let's say it's four for hockey: offense, defense, goaltending, and special teams. Your special teams on your power play, you need to convert when you have the extra man on the ice. When you are on the penalty kill, you need to do well. You can't be giving up 3 goals. You can't be giving up penalties and then automatically letting those turn into goals opportunities that are above average compared to other teams in the league. That is hurting you. Again, when I talk about your baseline and your range of outcomes, those things bring down your baseline. They hurt your overall range of outcomes, your chances to win games. It brings it down from the get-go. Not to mention when you have a goaltender who is performing at historically bad levels. Now, do we expect that to necessarily continue? No, we are kinder to Georgiev than most probably would be. We have a little bit more optimism for him, and I do genuinely believe it will improve as the team gets healthier and better in front of him. But yes, your team is better by being in the offensive zone. Like you said, you can win games by being in the offensive zone, but you can really hamper yourself when all it takes are a few 2-minute opportunities, giving up power plays to let a team back in. You can be in the offensive zone, you can dominate possession, but if that's all it takes to even up the score in a game, they don't need to be in your zone all the time. And if they have a stellar goaltender, aka Hellebuck, or anyone you'll really run into in the playoffs, it doesn't work out. So the Avs have the potential to be the best team or one of the best teams in the league this year. They just have to, show up in all 4, let's say, phases of the game.
Exactly. And there you go, everybody. Dom keeping it real, Dom keeping it level. That's why I brought him on the podcast to begin with. And ultimately, I don't necessarily want the Avalanche to be the President's Trophy winning team. They don't need to be the number one. And what's funny is the year they won the cup, they were definitely like the number 1 team that year. And I think everybody knew it. They were at the top of the Super 16 the entire year. But the Panthers actually ended up winning the President's Trophy that year, funnily enough. But one thing I wanted to touch on that you had said is I think it's a lot like a bad test grade, right? Is you have one bad test and it totally tanks your grade, and it takes a very continuous effort of good grades to build that back up. So I think some of the numbers we're seeing right now are a little misleading. And I think that's why the PDO is so great, is it can show you that, the Avs, those numbers are in fact a little bit misleading, and that this team is much better than what is currently being shown. And I think because of that slow start with poor goaltending performances and a lack of cohesion, that it just kind of tanked all of the Avalanche's analytics and numbers. But if you just took in the factor of like the last, let's say 6 or 7 games, it looks way different. So that's all I really have on that.
It certainly does look way different. I would be interested actually, and we don't have to do this right now or maybe before the end of the episode, or it can be a fun fact for a later episode. I'd be interested to see out of the last, in the 21st century, let's just go back to 2000. How many of the President's Trophy winners have actually gone on to A, win the cup, but B, on average, how deep into the playoffs did they make it? I think it would be interesting to see, because I think that is a misleading stat, that by winning the President's Trophy and by having the most wins in the regular season, that you are expected to therefore be the most likely to win in the playoffs. And we've talked about it with the Jets. We've talked about it with the Bruins and their loss to Florida. Like these teams, you can have these all-time great seasons, but when you play the same team for 5, 6, 7 games in a row, it is much more difficult to win than just going and playing them once at a time and then going to another team. I'm telling you, there's more there with film and stuff. I could keep going back and on it over and over again, but I'd be interested to see that stat, and we can do some research to figure.
I already looked, brother. You said it, and I found it. So since 1986, when the President's Trophy was inaugurated, the winner the President's Trophy winner has won the cup 8 times, which means that 29 out of 37 years and quote inferior team has gone on to win the Stanley Cup. So only 8 times in the history of the President's Trophy has the President's Trophy winner won the cup. And I believe, just off the top of my head without looking, the last team to do it was actually the Blackhawks.
Alrighty, yeah, but I'd be interested to see if we had more time to get into that in-depth stat to see what is the average depth. Is it out in the first round, out in the second?
Oh my God, guess what? This fucking this chart that I found literally tells us this exact information.
Oh, amazing. Tell it to me.
All right, so yeah, the last team who won the President's Trophy and won the cup was the 2012-2013 Blackhawks. So we can definitely dive into it a little more and do the statistics or the fractions of it. But it's looking like to me that a lot of these teams, at least the older, okay, so it's kind of broken up into 2 segments. The older teams prior to, let's say, prior to 2004, they all lost pretty much in the conference finals or division finals with a couple cup final losses. Past that, a lot of them are either in quarterfinals / second round losses.
That's what's interesting. I don't know if it's clearly something with the modern league, but you would think those teams that are the President's Trophy winners more often than not, I mean, obviously Florida and Boston is a perfect example of not, but more often than not, you think of them as having the best chance to sweep in their opening series, in their first round series, or win in 5 and have extra time for rest. Perhaps there's something about too much rest and not being fresh or being a little bit out of the zone and then being caught on their heels when it gets into that second round. I don't know, but we can do some more analysis on that in the future segments and future episodes of the pod. I know, because somehow we are here after like an hour and a half and I've yet to go in the tank. So oh my God. What if I do? What do I do if I go tanking right now on this?
Well, you know, Dom, I appreciate you letting me go on that long analytical, rant there. There are definitely people who do it much better and much faster than me, but this is a podcast, so I knew I had more time than just a 10-minute YouTube video. So I appreciate you letting me go on and on about it. But everybody, it is time for your favorite segment, and I will leave I'll leave you in his capable hands while I'll take a quick run away from the microphone. Everyone, it is time for In the Tank with Dom.
Well, thank you, Corey. Enjoy your quick break from the microphone. And hey, it's always okay. We are here for the long form content, as our fans hopefully know by now, with our nearly 2-hour episodes every week, rather than this short form and distracted brain rot culture we live in. No offense to anyone out there. I'm going to start today in the tank by talking about the Sharks being at the New York Rangers tonight. And I've already mentioned that was ultimately a 3-2 loss for those of you that have been listening through our whole spiel. However, the game for me, or it started as an important game, particularly for Barclay Goodrow. So the former and current Shark was excited to play against the Rangers because he was very frustrated, and reasonably so, about his exit from the New York Rangers, with them cutting him and throwing him on waivers unceremoniously, especially after his playoff game winner in New York to extend their series and to help out the team in such a big moment. I expected a good game from him, and it was all right, although it wasn't anything special. The Sharks did actually score first from Liljegren, which, for those of you who don't know, his name is not Liljegren. He has made that clear since being in San Jose that it is Liljegren. So please do respect the man and say his name correctly. And the Sharks, when we've talked about getting ahead early in games and taking a lead early in the game, they were able to do that and take a 1-0 lead into the first intermission, near even on shot on goal count, really being competitive with the Rangers and quite honestly taking it to them. However, the Rangers showed their talent, and it really paid the price or was the difference maker in the second period to flip the script with 3 consecutive goals in the span of less than 5 minutes between the 11 and 15-minute markers of the game. They also had many more shots in the second and in the third periods. In fact, when I was watching live, there was a stat that flashed on the screen with about 5 minutes left that the Rangers were outshooting the Sharks 11-1 in the third at that point in time, where they had 34 shots on goal to the Sharks 18, and also had nearly twice as many opportunities, not just shots on goal, but shot opportunities in general. The Sharks did score with the goalie pulled near the end of the game, as you heard me talk about, with about 30 seconds left. However, it was certainly too little too late. That was also a power play goal, so a 6-on-4. Glad to see them convert on the obvious opportunity. But ultimately, I think they were overmatched playing in a difficult environment. It is hard for any team on the road to go play in Madison Square Garden. It is one of the most electric arenas and just historically significant arenas in all of the NHL. But pivoting back to the start of the week of the analysis, so we've ended the week here on a sad face, and unfortunately we have to go back to a week ago with another sad face, and this one is a far droopier, sadder, crying sad face. I can make up descriptions for emojis all day long, and none of them will make sense, so I'm just going to keep moving because I covered some of this game live, and this was the game at home versus the Minnesota Wild. And the Wild have been a better team than expected this year. I was disparaging of them, and clearly unreasonably so. They have outperformed every expectation I have and have cemented themselves as a playoff contending team at this early phase of the season. Obviously, I would be interested when Cory returns to see what their PDL stat is like, to see if a regression is expected or if perhaps we should expect even more from them and that my low expectations were lower than they even should be. And the fact that the Wild are the better team really did show. They had a strong forecheck in particular, and that's what we've talked about with Cory on the podcast, as well as not just being offensive, but playing defense in the offensive zone and going and fighting for pucks, mucking it up and fighting for the puck battles in the corner, or also just in the neutral zone. Making it difficult for a team to gain momentum or a clean entry into the zone is a great way to stop or slow offensive production. And Minnesota did that very well. They had a talent leap above the Sharks, but also had a step as far as their speed on the ice was concerned. They were playing with that hustle that I've talked about in regards to the Jets. And it was difficult to watch, to say the least. And thankfully, we did have the podcast on last week, so I interrupted briefly here and there, but ultimately I did not have to watch as the Sharks were outplayed overall. An important note, though, the Sharks have continued to reduce the overall power plays or stay consistent at a lower penalties average per game at still around 2 to 3 over the past couple of weeks. However, they did concede 2 early first period power plays. Like I said, only allowing 3 in the game. However, ultimately that third one in the second period was one too many and led to a Wild goal. So it's something that the Sharks need to continue working on to improve their penalty killing. But again, any team should always be focused on having less penalties and giving up less power plays, period. That is the special teams game we talk about. The Sharks also could use to improve on their power play opportunities, because seeing as they are a worse team on average compared to most teams in the league, and I love them, but that they still are, that is the reality of the situation. They do need to capitalize on those special teams opportunities when they should have an easier time with zone entry and would have the extra player on the ice. So I would love to see improvement on both sides of the special teams play from San Jose. However, an important note is Macklin Celebrini. He did score both the goals. The final score, if I haven't said it already, was ultimately 5-2, including an empty netter for Minnesota. But Macklin Celebrini did score both of the Sharks' goals, and he is actually, fun fact, the youngest player in the NHL. I think many might have known that. But did you know he was actually scoring those goals against Marc-Andre Fleury? Yes, you should know that if you listened to last week's episode because I said that. However, did you know Marc-Andre Fleury is actually the oldest player in all of the 32 teams in the league on an active roster? So both goals were scored by the youngest player in the league against the oldest player in the league, which was a unique stat and situation to be sure, seeing as Marc-Andre has been in the league nearly as long or longer than Macklin has been alive. So that was very cool to see the respect there from Celebrini for Fleury, and still the talent as well to be able to best one of the best goaltenders in the past decade in the league, not once but twice. Those that would be the main positive from the game against the Wild. Overall, though, it was not the best Sharks performance, and they were very clearly overmatched from the get-go. And that was, as stated, that was on Thursday, the 7th of November. So moving forward, they did ultimately have a couple days off going into a road trip. So their next game was on the 10th at New Jersey for the Devils. And this game was an amazing game, the most important game of the week that I have to cover, because Mackenzie Blackwood, with his first shutout again of the season against his former team in the Devils, with 44 saves, no less. 44, count him. He is playing incredible. And when I was talking with Cory earlier about how much the Sharks cannot afford to lose Blackwood, how much we need him to stick around, how much management needs to value his contribution and give him a contract extension, this is the epitome example of what I'm talking about, because the final score was 1-0. There was no margin for error. He could not afford to give up a single goal, and he did not. The Sharks were solid on the fundamentals in this game and really supported their goaltender with only 2 penalties taken by the Sharks. And as a fun fact for all of those of you out there, both San Jose goaltenders were previously with the Devils, and the Devils have former Sharks Timo Meier and Brendan Dillon on their roster, offensemen and defensemen respectively. I'm not sure if Cory is back at the microphone yet, so I'm going to pause here and see. Cory, do you recall our conversation about the New Jersey and San Jose general managers?
Hi. I heard you summon me. Okay. No, I do not recall that conversation, Dom.
Well, I will remind you and enlighten everyone, because it is interesting the fact that San Jose has traded what it seems frequently with New Jersey over the last few years to pick up not one but 2 goaltenders, both of our active roster goaltenders from New Jersey, while the Devils have picked up both Timo Meier and Brendan Dillon from the Sharks. So I believe you and I had the question, or we were possibly going to cover this more in a future episode, but wondering if there are certain teams that have better relationships with other teams, even through changes in general manager, since there is a history of good relationship and trades between New Jersey and San Jose. And if I recall, you had something similar for the Avalanche.
Not yes, I remember this conversation now, but oh my gosh, off the top of my head, I can't recall. I would have to look into it a little more tightly. So
no worries.
I don't know.
I kind of put you on the spot. Not a big deal, but you would have loved this New Jersey game because Blackwood was perfect. And I do mean perfect, with 44 saves on 44 shots and a 1-0 win, getting revenge on his former team. Hallelujah. I did not expect to win this game when I looked on the slate, the start of a hard road trip with New Jersey, obviously New York, and also Philadelphia in the middle. If anything, I expected Philadelphia to be the win rather than New Jersey. So very strong game, best game of the season by far from either Sharks netminder. And we are very happy for Mackenzie Blackwood. He deserved the shutout, especially in New Jersey against his old team, to send a message to them for really letting him go for not much return from the Sharks. So he has been a steal for our team.
Also, I did hear your question about the Sharks PDO. You guys are currently sitting at 98.5, so a little unlucky. And I mean, people have to imagine, because my mom was asking me, they're like, well, why? She was saying, well, why isn't it like at 80 or, a much bigger number? And I said, really, it just comes down to decimal points. It's a matter of percentages. So even the smallest minute movement can lead to big changes. So you have to keep in mind that even though that's only 1.5 off of 100, that is pretty major overall in regards to like the smallness of the numbers we're dealing with, I guess is what I mean. You'd also be happy to know that your boys are above average in both save percentage of 5-on-5 and overall save percentage, by the way. So,
Well, I don't think that surprises me because, like we've been both touting his praises, Blackwood has been incredible over the course of the season, and Vanacek has not been too bad himself either. But the PDL was interesting. I actually love to hear that because it does make sense with the early, when you open up on a 9-game losing streak, it can only go up from there, right? So it's supposed to get better, and we've seen that as they are no longer the last place team in the league. But actually, if you have it or can find it, the PDL I was asking for was Minnesota because they have severely overperformed my expectations. But I have admitted more than one time that my expectations were unfairly low. So I'm wondering if we expect more of a regression from them or this pace of theirs to continue.
well, you want to know what's funny is with my big like analytics section, I was actually going to do something for the Wild, but I was like, maybe I should save that because it took me a long time to put together the Jets one. So I was like, maybe I'll sit on that Wild one. Well, for the Wild right now, they're sitting at 4th in the league with a PDO at around, it's somewhat off by like 0.1%, depending on where you look, but it's about 103.5. So yes, they are overperforming just a little bit right now. And I think that can mainly come down to the engine driving their team, Kirill the Thrill. Also, I'm going to get up again, but I can hear you, so if you need me, summon me. But yes, that's where they're currently sitting at 103.5. So a little lucky.
Well, thank you for that, Corey, because that is what I do think. I do think they are performing above expected, but even with my unreasonably low expectations, I did feel like it was meant to regress some at some point. Especially when we love Marc-Andre Fleury, but when you are playing the oldest player in the league in your net, eventually that's got to take a toll as we get into the dog days of the season. And I expect them to regress somewhat. Nonetheless, they were dominant in their win over the Sharks, as we would expect when their talent level has just been higher. Back to the New Jersey Devils game, though, and I gave you the overarching notes, but it was a strong first period from San Jose with a later in the period, Sharks goal from Nico Sturm actually just throwing it at the net and getting a goober goal, if you can hear me, Corey. Goober goal off of former Shark Timo Meier, who I previously mentioned. And that was the only goal of the game. So in a shutout and a goober goal, what a combo. But is sometimes what it takes to win games in the NHL, especially if you are the San Jose Sharks and grasping for anything. The second period also started well with a couple of shots right off the bar. Toffoli ringed one right off the post, and it seems like it could have been 3-0 for the Sharks early in the second period. Ultimately, though, it did remain 1-0 till the end of the game, as I mentioned. They also had a very close shorthanded opportunity early in the second period. However, as the second period progressed and we cross over like the halfway point, there's no better way to say this than the long change has been a problem for the Sharks we've seen over the last couple of games. I've talked about it, but there have been multiple games now where in the middle of the second period, the second half of the second period, if you will, so 10 minutes and on, counting on down in the second period, there have been multiple cases where offensive players or just players in general for the Sharks have been caught on the ice for over 3 minutes. And when we talk about shifts, we're thinking ideally an ideal hockey shift is somewhere in the 30 seconds to a minute, but let's just target 45-second range. So if you are out there typically, or the average shift is 45 seconds, being out there for over 3 minutes is doing 4 consecutive shifts. And you have to remember, this is the fastest game on 2 legs. So you are out there sprinting all the time. That is beyond tiring. It is very difficult to do, and it provides a huge advantage to an offense in the second period in particular when they can trap a defense out there, a defending team, because it is hard for them to get on the puck, to close out, to have that aggression, to have that speed that you need to actually compete or win back the puck. So an offensive team can make changes with their bench right there, while its defensive team, in this case, my Sharks, can be stuck on the ice and just burning energy without much hope of any returner getting off the ice. Ultimately, even in these cases, they can try to clear the puck, but when you're so depleted of energy, it is hard to throw it down the ice because you're also, mind you, trying to not ice the puck. Because if you ice the puck, you're still trapped out on the ice. For those of you who don't know that basic rule of hockey, when you ice the puck, throwing it all the way down past the opposing team's end goal line when you are behind the center ice red line. So if you are in your own zone or just past your own blue line, but not past center ice, and you throw the puck and it is not touched and goes behind the red line at the other team's goal, that is icing. And that brings a face-off back into your defensive zone. But more importantly, you are not allowed to substitute players. So when you are stuck on the ice for really over a minute and a half, but let's say 2 minutes, or in this case, 3 minutes, you have to feather the puck to get it far enough down the ice that you can make it all the way back to your bench right at the opposing team's blue line, or at least on the other side of center ice, but also not throw it too hard that it goes for an icing and that you can't get off the ice. And so this has been a predicament that has been affecting the Sharks over multiple games. I don't know exactly what the solution is, or if they need to be better, I think just in general in the neutral zone, allowing opportunities with puck control to be able to get off the ice and target 30-second shifts and really just try to survive that second half of the second period. It has been consistently bad. Once again today, when I talked about those 3 goals that were scored in the second period, I'll let you take a guess of when those goals occurred. And that would have been between, drum roll please, I will do it myself, and Cory will add it in post.
What if I don't? What if I don't, Dom?
That'd be so depressing. You'd leave me hanging. But anyway, when have those goals been scored in the game against the Rangers? All 3 of them came between the 10 and 15 minute markers of the second period. So between 10 to 5 minutes left in the period. Like I've been talking, the back half of the second period, when your legs are tired, the long change is starting to get draining. They really need to focus on improving their puck control. They need to improve their zone control and focus on shorter shifts. I think that'd be my goal, or my request for Coach Warsofsky, is to emphasize shorter shifts when it's getting later in that second period, because we are getting killed out there as a team. I don't have an exact stat. I can definitely track one down for you ultimately, but I'm sure during those second half of the second period, those final 10 minutes of the second period, I'm sure the goals plus the Sharks plus minus is very bad, severely negative, and that has been when the majority of the goals scored against the team that have led to losses have been scored, as was the case tonight. However, nonetheless, even though this all happened, going back to the New Jersey game and getting back on topic, they were able to hold the line, even though they were trapped out on the ice. Blackwood was able to get a stop, get a chance for the guys to get a break, get fresh legs out there, and continue playing defense. It really was from that midpoint of the second period onwards, all the way through the third, though. It was the Devils' offensive game, and the Sharks began to focus all on defense and put less pressure back on the Devils' netminder. And ultimately, the final shot on goal count was 44-27. At that midway point I was talking about, it was about 18-18 or so. So just to give you an idea, that would mean that if we measured the game in halves rather than 3 periods, over the first half of the game, they were about even, but the second half, it was about a 26-9 differential, so a 17 shot on goal differential, and that you can just know how much that impacted the possession, even if you didn't have the opportunity to see it. Nonetheless, though, Mackenzie Blackwood was perfect, as I've said. Stellar performance, not letting in a single goal, making some incredible saves in the third, And really, I can't even fault the Sharks for not having a ton of shots on goal in the third because they absolutely sold out on defense. You could really just see it, feel it, know that they knew Blackwood had the opportunity at the shutout, especially against his old team, and they wanted it to happen. The amount of block shots that they took as well, they really, all of them individually took one for the team to help Blackwood get that shutout. It was a true team win, even if it didn't show up that way on the score sheet with only a 1-0 victory. Very impressive to watch, very bolstering, heartening in a sense to see how much the team rallied together, similar to how they did when Will Smith scored his first goal of the season and had that relief and had that support of everyone around him. You saw that for Blackwood with not only did they celebrate with him and then start to make their way off the ice, but multiple players actually doubled back to go celebrate with him again and really congratulate him because it was a stellar performance, but everyone, like I said, sold out and did what they could for their netminder, who's done his best for them all year to keep them in games. A game like this is also where what Cory is talking about the extra saves above average, the expected goals against, these stats that the Sharks are actually top half of the league in, surprisingly. It's because of games like these and performances by Mackenzie Blackwood that have really bolstered the team and, as I've said many a time, kept the Sharks in games. It has been the difference maker compared to last year when they were in a distant last place, alone with the the Sharks were alone with the Ducks and the Blue Jackets, and that was about it, far behind the rest of the league. This year, it is far more competitive. They are in that bottom tier of teams, but they are not alone, and nor are they at the bottom. There are at least 4 teams behind them as the points sat when I looked and prepared for the podcast episode this evening. Moving forward, though, the final game I have to cover is the 11-11. So, if you believe in it, make a wish, because it was a back-to-back game on the road, moving from New Jersey to Philadelphia to play the Flyers. And as I said before, the Flyers are one of those teams that are also near to the bottom of the league. So when I looked at this road trip going New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York, I did not have the highest of hopes, to say the least, but I expected Philadelphia would be our best chance to get a win. Well, when you win a game unexpectedly, sometimes you lose a game you would hope to win, and that was the case in Philly. Ultimately, the Sharks lost 4-3 in a shootout, and it was impressive that they were able to force it that far. However, when we talk about the OT shootout, or what Cory likes to call the skills competition, that has been a continued issue.
I'd like to point out,
Sharks.
I did not coin that term. That is from other people. I just picked it up and I liked it. So it doesn't just come from me. I just want to make sure I'm not taking credit for that. Carry on.
Oh, well, thank you, Cory. Well, you brought it to my world, so you can credit the proper authorities, and I will credit you for introducing it to me via this podcast, actually, because I had not heard it referred to that way until we started recording together, as a fun fact.
Really?
Yeah, I had actually not. I've heard skills competition in other ways, but never for the in regards to the shootout. I've only thought of it in regards to like at the NHL with either like similar to like how the NFL does like the Hall of Fame game, or when you have the All-Star game, the All-Star skills competitions, that type of thing. I'd never actually heard it in regards to a shootout. So anyway, very cool thing. I don't mean to take credit away from any.
No, not at all.
Party.
I just wanted to let everybody know that is by all means not my own creation. I just want to give credit where credit is due at the very least. Where I first heard it, I can't quite pick out, but I do just want to say that like it was not me that made it.
Well, we appreciate the candor, and I'm sure whoever it was that you picked that up from does as well. But as I was stating, the shootout continues to be a problem for the Sharks. They have yet to win one yet this year. Really, when they get to OT, they have to win in those 5 minutes, or it is looking like they are destined to only have a single point, unfortunately. Nonetheless, the Sharks did rally from being down 3-0 to force overtime in the shootout in this game. The second day of a back-to-back is always tough, and we've talked about it. And while the Avalanche are typically one of the better teams in the league on that stat, just over 50% when it comes to back-to-back games, let's just say the Sharks are not. And ultimately, that was the case. And I think some of the tired legs early in the game, it just struggled to settle in. But also, what we talked about before is giving up the early goals can sometimes be a backbreaker, can be a momentum shifter. And they were just a bit sluggish out of the gate. Eric Johnson, actually, Corey, you might recognize that name, I expect.
Absolutely. He was going for the Gordie Howe in that game. I do know that.
He was
Scored
going for the Gordie Howe.
absolute blast and then immediately got into a fight.
Yep, and that's what I was going to say. He opened the scoring early in the first period, and within the next 3 minutes, if I recall exactly, maybe it's the next 5, Eric Johnson was fighting Giovanni Smith, who, by the way, who has showed up well in his few starts for the Sharks in his early appearances with the team. Not someone I've seen a lot of, but what I have seen, I think he is going to be a great fourth line guy, one of those physical guys who gets out there, who's willing to fight and muck it up. They had a good little fight, but it wasn't that Eric Johnson was initiating the fight. No. Giovanni Smith went right for Matvei Mishkov back from an extended absence due to injury and went trying to pester, let's say, the young man into a fight. And Eric Johnson came flying in from off screen to fight Giovanni Smith. So not only was he the first one on the score sheet, but he showed up big time to defend his players, especially a young player that the Flyers expect to be their superstar of the future. So as much as I want the Sharks to win fights and win games, we have a huge amount of respect for Eric Johnson. And as you put it, going for the Gordie Howe early in the game. For those who don't know, Corey, would you like to educate them on the Gordie Howe hat trick and what that means?
I would love to. So for anybody who doesn't know who Gordie Howe is, he was a man who is eternal and played hockey in the real gridiron days of the league, and he played for about 1,000 years. He played for so long, he was the only person ever play with both his sons. Move over, LeBron and Bronny. Gordie Howe did it first, and he did it best. But anyway, Gordie Howe was a mean son of a bitch on the ice, and the Gordie Howe hat trick, aptly named after him. Gordie Howe actually is, well, I guess now going to be third all-time in goals scored. So he scored a lot, but like I said, he fought a lot too. So a Gordie Howe hat trick, which actually is not done all that often, is when a player scores a goal, has an assist, and a fight all in the same game.
And I don't know if Eric Johnson got the assist in this game, but back to you. What were you going to say there, Corey?
Would you like to take a get? My friend actually sent me a list, and he asked me, what do you think this list is? And I ended up getting Gordie Howe hat tricks. So would you like to guess who leads in all-time Gordie Howe hat tricks as I quickly try and find the image that he sent to me? Where the heck is it?
Just to ask and understand the concept, is it not Gordie Howe who leads his own stat?
He does not actually. Here it is. I found it. He actually isn't even in like the top of the list.
Really?
But it is, I will say the person at the top of the list is a name that you would recognize as he is currently a coach in the NHL.
Currently a coach. East or West? Help me break it down a
He's
little bit.
He's a Western Conference coach.
Okay, Western Conference. Who are the younger-ish Western Conference coaches?
I think he actually won the Jack Adams, so pretty recently. Last year, as a matter of fact.
Why can't I think of this right now? My brain is shutting down on me.
Bald-headed wonder.
Oh, I know it. I know it, and I just can't. It's on the tip of my tongue.
It's Rick Tocchet.
Oh, thank you. As soon as you said it, like I could picture his face up there in Vancouver for the Canucks, but I couldn't get couldn't get it. Wow. Didn't realize he actually led that stat.
At 18 in his career.
Yeah, I mean, that's a rare thing to find.
I feel like they're honestly sometimes harder to get than regular hat tricks. Because, I mean, you can get players that'll get plenty of goals and assists in a game, but not a lot of those guys are also going to fight. So it's pretty hard to get them Gordie Howes.
And similarly, the guys who are typically fighting are on your fourth line. They're your big boys who don't necessarily have the highest talent level to add goals or assists with consistency. ultimately, going back to the case of Eric Johnson, he did not make it to the Gordie Howe hat trick. He fell short of the
Bummer.
assist. However, the man he stuck up for, Matvey Michkov, did get both an assist and a goal in regulation and also scored during the shootout.
Okay.
So the impact of standing up for the young man definitely played out through the rest of the game. Going back to it, though, when you're down early in the game, sometimes you need to go for a fight to try to get the team in it. Ultimately, that did not work because that's when Matvey Michkov did jump behind the D on a stretch pass to ultimately put the Flyers up 3-0 early in the second. I guess I skipped over the fact that the Flyers had an extra gear and were the faster team converting on a power play late in the first. My bad. But they ended the first up 2-0 off of a power play goal, even though the Sharks have been giving up less power plays overall, about 2 to 3 per game over the past 2 weeks. They had been doing a good job not giving up power play goals, but for 2 or 3 consecutive games now, it would have been 2 because they gave up one tonight to the Rangers. For 2 consecutive games now, they have conceded 1 power play goal on 3 given opportunities. So that's something where I think a bit of the law of averages, or it's bound to even out at some point, that even though the Sharks have gotten better and have been stopping a lot of power plays, teams are still able to score against them more recently. As I stated, though, Matvey Michkov was able to jump behind the D on a perfect stretch pass, perfectly timed, that he was not offside and able to move in with speed into the zone and be 1-on-0 against Vanacek in net and put the Flyers up 3-0 early in the second. However, in this one game, the shoe was on the other foot, and the Sharks actually took over for the second half of the game, that second half of the second period. And this is when the Sharks started to push back with Barclay Goodrow, the man who did not have the night he was hoping for tonight against the Rangers. He ended up out there throwing punches with Nick Seeler. So not only 1, but 2 fights on a night for a team in the Sharks that, as much as I love fights, they don't actually fight that much. I would think we need to do some research, Corey, to see which teams statistically fight the most often in the past 5 years. However, that second fight did give the spark that the Sharks were looking for, along with some strong defense through the second half of the second period. They were able to generate more chances for the Sharks and improve their offensive output with 2 goals in the final 5 minutes of the period and bring the momentum into the third, only down 3-2. It took a while, and the third period was definitely balanced and very physical, but the Sharks, and it was Barclay Goodrow, the man who kickstarted the momentum with his fight, ultimately was the one who scored the equalizer with about 3 minutes left, or maybe it was 2 minutes left in the third period to force overtime. There was not a ton to analyze from overtime for the record. The Sharks actually did have a power play opportunity to be 4-on-3 in overtime. And Corey, we've talked about how those need to be almost automatic. You need to win when you have those chances to be on a power play in OT. And unfortunately, the Sharks were not able to do so. And so that's ultimately what I point to as, despite everything else, that's what I point to as responsible for the loss. Because if the Sharks know it and statistically are not good going into a shootout, that was their best chance to win the game and take it with all it took was 1 shot, 1 opportunity. Play some Eminem. They had to take it.
God,
Would they
I was
capture
gonna say
it?
the same thing. Damn it, dude.
Well, they
Darn it.
let it slip, so I kept the pun running there. But with that brings my Shark-specific analysis for the games to an end. However, there's a note that you and I both know, and I hope you're able to link the video in the description for today's podcast.
I
But
can. What do you need?
before the game against New York, while the Sharks were practicing at Chelsea Piers, for those who don't know,
Oh, yes.
for those who don't know, Corey knows, but for those who don't know, when teams are playing in New York, Madison Square Garden is a very busy place, and so it can be hard for hockey teams to always be able to practice in, especially the opposing team. So teams will often practice at the rink at Chelsea Piers, and that is a rink that is shared with the public and with rec leagues. So the Sharks will be on one half of the ice practicing, while the other half of the ice is open to the public, and they only have one locker room. So the players and any other skaters who are in there at the same time have the opportunity to interact some. And we just have to shout out and put our hands and clap for Coach Warshawski, because what a class act. He met in the locker room a 65-year-old, yes, you heard that correctly, 65-year-old rec league goalie named Harold Robinson. And not only did he meet him and have the pleasure of talking to him and invite him to talk with the team, he invited him out with the team to practice and take some reps in the net. The video that Cory will link for you all. You should go watch it. It's really cool to see. It's impressive to see someone at the age of 65 able to drop down on their knees trying to stop a shot and then get back up. Like, my dad couldn't do that, and he used to play goalie, so trust me, I understand how difficult that is on the knees to be a goalie in general, let alone be one at the good young age of 65. So what was really cool, though, is in his interview, I'm not sure if we have the article linked as well. I could try to find one for us to link.
I'm going to link the article, because the article itself actually holds the Twitter link to the video that was taken, so I will link the article as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Cory. Yeah, in that article, there'll be some details from the interview, and I won't spoil too much, but it was a really positively impactful experience for Mr. Robinson. Harold, the goalie I have spoken about, he had the opportunity to have a fist bump with Vitek Vanacek and actually speak with Mackenzie Blackwood, who at times was looking over his shoulder from behind the net, offering him tips. He also had a comment about Macklin Celebrini and the youngster who was merciless in his attempts against Marc-Andre Fleury, the oldest goaltender in the league, was similarly merciless, going bar down against the 5'8", 65-year-old Robinson, though Robinson appreciated the opportunity and respected Macklin for giving him a real shot to face NHL quality shooters. It was a really cool thing to see and really cool experience for him to interact with many of the players, and just one of the better just stories about hockey that isn't about the game itself, but about what the game can mean to others in the community of all ages. So I'm very proud to say that my coach, my players, my franchise were a part of it, and could have such a positive impact on a true hockey player and hockey fan in Mr. Harold Robinson. So for Harold, for Coach Warshawski, for all the players on the ice for the Sharks, we salute you.
Thank you for sharing that, Dom. It's a very feel-good story, and if we had some more time, I would definitely talk more at length about it, but I think you did a perfect job encapsulating everything that meant. So it was super special, and it was super cute to read about and also to watch the video for.
Yeah, beautiful moment where it's more than just a sport. It's more than just a hockey game. It really, that's what I think all sport can mean. I think when we've talked about it with Columbus and the Gaudreaus, sometimes it's really refreshing to find the stories of not the game within the game, but the game outside of the game, maybe is the best way to call it.
Absolutely. I have some final rapid fire things that I won't dwell on too long, since we're already kind of stretching our time as it is, if you don't mind.
Yeah, fire away.
Thank you for that lovely in the tank. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody, Dom included, for allowing me to have my first real crack at some big analytical piece. I, of course, am long-winded as ever, but when I get on a roll typing things up and doing research, I just kind of can't stop myself. There are, of course, things that I didn't take into consideration when talking about the Jets. I, of course, could talk about Corsi and Fenwick and other stats that can obviously affect a game and players on an individual basis. But I wanted to first and foremost highlight stats that I think are obviously one of the most more impactful and more notable high-profile stats like the ones I discussed, but also I don't understand Corsi and Fenwick at a deeper level, so until I do, I don't really want to talk about something that I don't fully understand. So that's that. Thank you, everybody, though. I'm sure there's plenty of things that I missed, and feel free to politely let me know in the comments and not hurt my feelings. It's for tonight. The Dallas Stars put up 7 on the Boston Bruins, who lost 7-2. Would love to know why the Boston Bruins are doing so terribly.
We'd love to see that.
Yeah, would love to know why they're doing so terribly. Perhaps that cup window is finally closed. Connor McDingle has officially scored his 1,000th point, and it was, of course, a goal. So congratulations to him. Of course, one of the most prolific generational talents. But I would like to say that Nathan McKinnon is also very likely to get his 1,000th point this year, although Connor McDavid had a little bit easier because he came into the year with like 990. So he was at 999 tonight, and he hit 1,000. So congratulations to him. Of no surprise. I believe he was the 4th fastest player of all time to do so. During the Predators game, Mikko Rantanen took a very odd penalty, not through any fault of his own, but through... I'll try and find the video, Dom, so I can send it to you. I was going to show it to you, but I cannot find it off rip. Basically, what happens is Mikko and the Predators player go into the boards, and Mikko is like 10 feet away from him. The Predators player throws his head back like he's been shot, and Mikko is called for, I believe, like an elbow, which is absurd because he didn't even touch the man, but because he had an Oscar-worthy performance, Mikko was called on a penalty, and nobody really understood why. During the Kings game, I had the pleasure of taking a friend to their very first game at Ball Arena. They're originally from California. So that was a great experience because the entire time I got to answer their questions about hockey and everything that was going on the ice, which was really a dream come true. So I look forward to taking him to a few more. But this motherfucker had the audacity to ask me to borrow an Avalanche jersey to wear despite being a Kings fan. He said he just hoped for a good game, but then he said, "Go Kings, go," while wearing my Avalanche jersey. And that just feels sacrilegious. I was not a big fan.
They lost. The Kings lost. California rivals down with the Kings right now. Like, well, he deserved that loss for doing that shit. I don't hate on your friend. I'm glad he got to go to the game. I'm glad you could take him because there's no better person to go to a game with. But that's what you get for that treachery. If you're going to go for the opposing team, that's fine. I'll go sit next to Cory and I'll wear my Sharks jersey loud and proud. Don't be half and half. Don't be a snake in the grass.
But, Mikko Rantanen also scored a natural hat trick, which was great for somebody's very first game at Ball Arena. It was fantastic. I said last week that I would not talk about Gabe Landeskog till anything major happened. Well, something major happened. Gabe Landeskog is already back on the ice skating again, which is a very positive piece of news when looking towards the captain to return. Quickly on Capo Kakinen, the Avalanche placed Capo Kakinen on waivers when he was reclaimed by the Winnipeg Jets, who immediately sent them down to their AHL affiliate. Once again, the Avalanche have humped and dumped a goaltender, which is somewhat disappointing, as I don't feel like Kakinen got a fair shot to really prove any of his talent or skill. However, I understand that the Avalanche are doing this to really, based on what Jared Bednar's comments were, to light a fire under their 2 primary goaltenders' asses, which, based on recent performances, seems to have worked. So they sent him away, but this could also be indicative of another goaltending move coming in the future, so we will see.
Don't manifest it.
Another note during the Kings game is Darcy Kemper left towards the end of the third period, about halfway through, with an apparent injury. It looks like he maybe pulled something, as no one was near him at the time of injury. They show on the replay he just moves in his goal crease, suddenly points to the bench needing to get off. So when the next play was blown dead, he went off, and David Riddick came in relief, but we're not quite sure what happened. If I had to take a guess, probably pulled his groin, one of the most common injuries for a goaltender, just maybe shifted wrong and things just didn't go quite right. So not quite sure what happened there. Finally, once again, Avalanche faithful, this Friday is going to be fucking awesome, and I can't wait. I'm a fake ass fan because I'm telling everybody to watch, and I have another commitment that I have to attend to, so I have to record the game. It's pretty cringe, I know, so feel free to flame me in the comments for that one.
Oh, you didn't have to put that out there. Everybody knows
I have to
you
keep
are a real
myself
fan.
honest. Keep myself honest.
Well, Cory, you can miss a game. We've talked about it that we don't even all see every
It'll
game.
just be delayed. It'll just be delayed. I have to see this game.
Then I will be sure not to give you any messages or updates during the game so as not to spoil anything for you. Only other note from around the league this evening, the Buffalo Sabres got an OT win over the Blues, and so their continuous up and down, inconsistent roll has them at 8-8-1. So perfectly average as we've come to expect.
Perfectly average, as all things should be. Well, everyone, it's time for your fun fact of the night. So for those of you who maybe didn't know, the Avalanche actually used to have a Yeti foot on their shoulder. It was a big theme for them, but what was did they ever have a mascot that had to do with the Yeti? Well, in fact, they did, and I'm going to read this word for word straight from our local news station here in Denver. Before Bernie entertained fans at Colorado Avalanche games, there was Howler. Standing more than 7 feet tall, Colorado's friendliest Bigfoot burst onto the scene when the Avs came to Denver from Quebec City in 1995. He's the reason many of those classic Avalanche jerseys you see have the footprint on them. But Howler just kind of disappeared in 2001, and the Avs were without a mascot until Bernie arrived in 2009. Details are scarce about what happened before Howler's exit. Only an Associated Press story detailing a March 1999 incident at McNichols Arena lends us any information. What we know is that Howler and a fan named Linda got into a scuffle. Linda Van Hook told 9 News she was wearing her then-boyfriend's Blackhawks jersey when she went outside for a smoke break between periods. Van Hook said Howler was going around bonking fans on the head with rolled-up posters, and he bonked her. She said she pushed him, he pushed back, and before long the pair were in a scuffle. Van Hook said security broke up the fight and put them in separate rooms while police took statements. She told 9 News Howler kicked her in the stomach during the scuffle and she went to the hospital to get checked out. The trail goes quiet about Howler after that. At the time, a spokesman for the then owner of the team told the AP, "My understanding is that there was an accident." That's about it. A lot of fans say he seemed to just disappear. Van Hook, who now lives in Florida, told 9 News, "I guess I was the end of Howler."
Well, I mean, we don't want to make a joke if that was in fact the case, because we don't want to enable or what's the word? Why am I blanking right now? I'm really tired. Anyway, point being, we don't want to endorse Howler's actions or enable him or anything. However, dare I say, he appeared and disappeared just as suddenly as Bigfoot does in all of the images we see from conspiracy theories online. Maybe he is somewhere hidden in the wilderness.
You're kicked off the podcast.
Damn. I'll miss you all. This has been the best highlight every week of my my week for the past 2 months.
The clock is counting
Cory...
down to the final horn. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of the Captain Avalanche Fancast. Did you know there is a comment section where you can leave your thoughts and questions? If you have something you want to know about the Avalanche, Sharks, or just hockey in general, leave it below and we'll be happy to try and answer it. There is also a unique poll for you to interact with every episode. The best thing you can do if you like what we're doing here is to follow us on whatever platform you're using and share this podcast everywhere you can, whether that's with your mouse or your mouth. Real quickly, everyone, we are very close to 10 followers. We are just 2 away, so if you haven't done so already, please click the follow button, especially on Spotify. It would help us out greatly, as well as rating the podcast. It helps it get seen by more eyes, and it takes just 1 click of the mouse to do, so we'd really appreciate it. But anyways, I'm Captain Avalanche Cory.
And this is Dom the Tank.
Check out our new episodes every Thursday. Thanks, everyone.